We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
Oh, hello there. Today I'd like to read to you an excerpt from my novella, Flyover Country. Jody. The last traces of twilight fell away from the sky as we finally set off. We headed west, chasing the sun, pushing through the opaque water, leaving a scummy wake snaking behind us. I twisted to look forward from my seat on the front bench while Jimmy followed the route of the submerged highway. We motored through intersections, stop signs protruding like helpless sentinels from the murky water. A few minutes out, we putted alongside a herd of cattle. They surged through the water in a weird-looking swim-walk, loping motion. They were heading for the high ground, I figured, and right now, that meant the town. We continued for a long stretch, telephone poles our only markers, their droopy lines hanging so low I could almost reach out and touch them. A barn loomed in the darkness, and Jimmy angled towards it. As we neared the uneven shingles, lopsided door, and broken windows soon made it clear it had not been used for many years. I heard a voice shout out from over the rumbling buzz of our outboard, and a low bungalow came into view. The shouting grew louder, and the cold bluish light of an electric lamp swung erratically just above the bungalow's roof like an intoxicated will-o'-the-wisp, pacing to and fro. Jimmy swung an intense searchlight at the will-o'-the-wisp, and the spotlight revealed the person who held the lantern still dancing on the rooftop. Over here, he shouted. We bumped up against the side of the house. Oh, thank God you're here, he called. Without warning, he began tossing items down at me. The first one bounced off my chest, but after the shock wore off, I managed to catch the rest. It turns out he was hurling paintings, more than half a dozen good-sized ones, too, frames and all. I stacked them on the seat behind me and said to Jimmy, I don't know about you, but I don't think he needs any medical attention. Jimmy just had time to yell, watch out, when the man leaped from the bungalow roof straight at me. I braced myself as he fell into my arms, and then the two of us tumbled into the bottom of the boat. And thank God it was as stable as Jimmy had promised. The momentum of his impact pushed us away from the house, but the flat bottom kept us steady. I did a quick survey of my various limbs. Legs, okay. Arms, okay. Head, check. I shoved him off. Wow, he said. You're soft in all the right places. What the hell, Steve? Jimmy shouted. He grabbed my hand to help me up. As I fought to extricate myself, my painting, Steve yelled. He crawled to the bench. Let me see, he counted. 6, 7, 8, all here. Wonderful. It was full on dark now, so I couldn't see so much of Steve or his paintings. I could tell he was wearing what looked like a baseball cap with flaps that were folded down over his ears. Fitting, because he personified that trapper hat vibe. I could just hear Naomi digging into this one. Besides the hat, Steve wasn't a very big guy, definitely a wiry build. Looked to be about 70, so pretty spry, considering his age. I caught a glimpse of his paintings whenever the searchlight beam randomly pawed across them. Cows, at least what I saw. Jimmy motored away from the bungalow, circling us back to town. Jimmy, what the hell is going on? Steve bellowed over the outboard. Jimmy told him about the dam. Turns out Jimmy didn't have a cell phone, and the flood had caught him off guard. Welcome to the club, Steve. He lost his power and his landline went before he had a chance to call for help. I stacked all my other artwork in the attic. Just had time to rescue these babies, though. He patted the canvases, now covered by his shirt to protect them from the water. Oh, yeah, he was sitting cross legged in the middle of the boat, shirtless, his scrawny chest covered by scraggly gray hair over a belly that literally could have been the poster child for pot bellies. Cows? I asked, as in, you could have taken anything, but you rescued these. Folk art, my dear, he said, looking smugly at my chest. Those paintings were all commissioned. Steve moved here from New York. He sells his paintings on the side of the road, Jimmy said. Did corporate art for 20 years, Steve said. Got paintings in the lobbies of BlackRock and Goldman Sachs. Have you heard of those folks, dearie? I raised my eyebrows. I literally couldn't help it. I decided he had to be lying and settled back into my seat. Cows. Goldman Sachs, really? Jimmy could tell what I was thinking and just laughed. It's true. You can check it out online. I glared at him. I mean, you can check it online when things get back to normal, he added before conspicuously fiddling with the outboard. Steve scowled. It's true, all right. Got tired of it. Soul sucking bastards always looking for the artistic equivalent of a balance sheet showing how much money they extorted that year. A lot, I'll bet, I said. A lot is right, my dear, he said. They're not all cows, by the way. He pulled out one from the stack under his shirt and held it out. Jimmy pointed the searchlight at the painting. A red splotch. My best guess was a bloody jellyfish, to be honest. This one's for one of my oldest clients, a pharmaceutical executive. Wants it for his bedroom. I could hear the mooing of the nearby swim-walking cattle as he sat there shirtless, hunched over his scarlet painting. The moon was out and full, hanging still and immutable above us, yet also behind us, wavering and uncertain as it followed along in the floodwater. I call it Prophet Supernova, he said, his leer peering out from beneath his trapper hat. Steve, I had already been waiting for like 5 hours before they finally sent someone to come and get me, okay? There I was on my frickin' roof. I hoped the water was done rising because I had left most of my paintings piled in the attic. If they got ruined, well, I was ruined, okay? Then again, maybe insurance would cover them. That might be pretty handy. I had called my insurance broker just before the landline went down. I was curious what he would say. If they were covered, well, it would be a shame if something happened to them. You know what I mean? But the asshole just laughed and said, No way. Said I should read my policy. I told him I couldn't read my policy at the moment because I was about to be under goddamn water, those guys. All the same. So I stacked all my artwork in a big pile in the attic, and the most valuable ones I just had to take with me. So I wrapped them as best I could. I had Prophet Supernova, of course, and a couple of my bovine art pieces for some collectors in Soho. A gallery owner I knew from around here put me in touch with them. Anyway, they wanted some of my folk art. I hate when they call it that. But Christ, at least they paid. So there I was, dancing on my roof, waiting for the yokel cops to get around to sending someone out here to save my frickin' life. That's all, no big deal. So I waited for 5 hours. Oh, I was dancing. You know what I mean? Dancing. Then they finally showed up cruising in some kind of tour boat. The girl, well, let's just say I was getting some seriously negative vibes. She didn't like my cow paintings, I could tell right away. There's a trick to doing them, you know. You have to make them look like they were painted by some unschooled yokel, and that's harder than it sounds. At first, I couldn't even do it. I felt like I was lowering myself to paint like that. I was a professional. Goldman Sachs bought my paintings, for Christ's sakes. So then I would go and sit in the fields and watch the cows. And I thought about why I had moved out here. Forget about everything. Just see the colors and the shapes. Forget about perspective, shading, and just stick with primary colors. I don't know. These paintings, in themselves, they aren't very good. They're almost cartoons. But everyone says they make them remember something special. Maybe a week at the cottage when they were 8 and were happier than they would ever be again, or maybe the apple pie they make for their grown up children when they come home to visit. I don't know. It sounds crazy, especially when you look at me. The universe is weird, man. That's all I know. And somehow I tuned in to some magic with my cows. But I really did feel like the woman didn't believe me about my painting, so I showed her Supernova. Meaningless wall art to soothe the corporate soul. That's all it was. If I could get them to take a cow painting instead and just look at the damn thing for a few minutes a day, I think I could change some lives. As soon as she saw Prophet Supernova, she knew I was telling the truth. It looked just perfect for Goldman Sachs.